Many people dream of being their own boss and running their own small business, and yet when they do, they suddenly find themselves caught up in red tape. They've got to comply with all the tax regulations, and at the same point, they've got to work out if the business is fundamentally solvent. Well, Professor Chris Evans from the Australian School of Business has looked at the high cost of business tax compliance and also the process of getting the accounts together to prove that companies are actually compliant with the tax regulations, and has found that the cost has really risen exponentially over the years. Chris joins me now. So, Chris, what's the real reason for the cost blowout?
Well, small businesses have got to account to the government for a variety of different taxes. And I think the blowout over the last 10 years, 12 years or so, has been the introduction of the GST in 2000. They have to comply with other taxes like income tax, payroll, pay-as-you-go, fringe benefits tax, capital gains tax before that. But the GST on top of this has made a real difference. So complying with their tax is a real hassle for small business.
And is there an easy way of avoiding this hassle? Do they have to go through all the accountants? Can they do it themselves?
It's very difficult for them to do it themselves, and over 90% do use a tax agent or an accountant to deal with their tax affairs. Probably they can minimise the hassle for themselves by having sensible accounting systems within their business, but their accountant should advise them on that. And there is a minimum amount of hassle that's going to be there regardless. I think our concern with the research was that there seems to be a lot more hassle than there should be there.
But are even the accountants you spoke to aware of some of the concessions that are available for small businesses?
It's an interesting point, because another part of our survey was looking at to what extent those special regimes for small businesses, the small business tax concessions, some of them in the capital gains tax regime, others are in GST accounting or cash accounting and things like that. We found that remarkably many small businesses who were eligible for those sorts of concessions frankly didn't know about it. And even if they knew about it, a lot of them were saying it's not worth the hassle. These things are brought in to help small business. They may reduce the amount of tax that's paid, but frankly they are such a hassle dealing with that a lot of businesses just throw their hands up and say, nope, not interested.
And can we put it into monetary terms? Are we talking about, say, 10% of turnover goes into keeping the accounts?
Well, I mean, in monetary terms of the average small business, now our small businesses tended to be at the larger end of the small businesses when we served them, but on average they were spending $28,000 a year on tax compliance, and that's one hell of a lot. If you look at it in terms of time, it's on average about 10 hours per week for the average small business. Again, that's a lot of time. If you think that's time that they can't productively spend on their business, that's the time that they're having to account for their business to the government.
But Chris, surely if they're putting together accounts for the tax office, it'll also help them work out how their business is going.
Well, look, that's the good news side of the story. It's not all bad news. The good news is that as a result of the GST and as a result of accounting generally for their taxes to the government, they're able to run their businesses more efficiently. They've actually got a better handle on the finances of the business, so the financial management is better than it would otherwise be. So there are benefits as well as costs to tax compliance.
And when it comes to the compliance, some of the people that you were talking to seem to be totally unaware of what they actually have to do.
Well, and that's the problem. You know, quite often, even now, we still have businesses which just have a shoebox full of invoices and receipts and just hand that to the accountant at the end of the year, and they haven't got a clue how their business is travelling, whether it's going well, whether it's going badly, quite literally whether the bank is going to come knocking on their door, you know, at some unexpected time.
So what would you like to see? If you were going to improve the system, what would be the best solution?
Okay. I mean, I think there are a variety of things that can be done. For the first place, as I mentioned earlier, governments can try and build their systems on the back of what businesses do rather than asking businesses to do something special and extra. So that's the first part. I think the second part is that we've got a very complex tax system. It's complex for all people who pay tax, but it's particularly complex for the small business sector of society. So what we should be looking to do is to simplify that system. Now, simplifying it may mean pulling out a lot of these special regimes and concessions that small businesses currently enjoy. It would mean instead having a broader base on which we pay tax, but lower rates for everyone. And I think on that basis, if we've got a cleaner, simpler system, we're going to have less hassle at tax time or indeed throughout the year for the small businesses.
But there'd be a lot of protests if that came in. After all, small business organisations have fought very hard for some of these tax concessions. They've expended a lot of time and money getting them.
It's always difficult to withdraw a concession concession once you've given someone a concession. But on the other hand, if you've got the trade-off of lower taxes, and remember, the biggest burden is the tax we pay. The next burden is compliance with those taxes. So if we get rid of some of the tax and reduce the hassle of tax time, I think small businesses would find that a much better deal.
And how about the individual who's actually being involved with these small companies? It must be taking up a huge amount of their time. Did you find respondents, again, hated the whole process?
Oh, look, nobody enjoys having to fill in tax returns, keep and record their records and so on. So there is resistance, inevitably, to tax compliance. But most people, and I think this is something we should emphasise, most people, and even most small businesses, do comply with their tax obligations. They may do it grudgingly at times, but they do it, and that's why we've got the sort of society we've got.
Well, after all, few people like it when the taxman comes knocking on the door. But
precisely. But, you know, we recognise that if you don't have those taxes, you don't have a civilised society. And I think there are some governments around the world, or some countries around the world, which are very good examples of that, and we'd probably not want to be looking like them.
Oh, I'm sure many small businesses wouldn't. Chris, it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.